Yamasaki Misaki lay trembling on her bed, her body frail and near collapse. She knew her time had come. Almost a year had passed since the cruel diagnosis of cancer, and the treatments had stripped her of the chance to bear children. Once, she had been nothing more than an introverted otaku, uninterested in romance or family. When death had first loomed before her, she hadn't even cried. But now, as her final breath approached, one desperate wish rose within her heart. If another life awaited her, she longed for only one thing: to become a mother. With that prayer, her heart gave out, and the world faded to black. Yet her story did not end. Her eyes fluttered open again, but no longer as Misaki. She found herself clothed in fine garments, a maid gently fastening the ties of a dress. Memories flooded her mind. She was Isabel Doris Simmons, the 17-year-old eldest daughter of a noble house in a land that resembled medieval Europe. Two sets of memories coexisted within her: the humble existence of Yamasaki Misaki and the privileged yet troubled life of Isabel. The truth struck her like lightning. She had been reincarnated into another world. As she absorbed the weight of her new identity, her family gathered for dinner. Her father greeted her warmly, remarking on how calm she appeared despite the looming wedding day. Inside, her mind whirled, but outwardly she offered a polite smile. Tomorrow she was to marry a duke, a man well into his 30s, with a child, wealthy enough that he required no dowry. To any 17-year-old girl, such a match might seem suffocating, even dreadful. Yet Isabel's pragmatic gaze took in the worn furniture of their home, the overworked servants, and the broken engagement that had come before. For her struggling family, this marriage was not just suitable, it was salvation. Still, the original Isabel had despised the arrangement. She had been spoiled, selfish girl, revolted at the idea of marrying a man so much older. But Masaki's soul, reborn within her, weighed it differently. To her father's astonishment, she spoke with sincerity. Perhaps this marriage was not so bad. He fought back tears at her sudden maturity, while her brother Oliver muttered in disbelief that his sister must have lost her mind. Their maid Sally could only whisper that Isabel seemed more rational now. As her reflection drifted to the mirror, she studied her unfamiliar beauty: dark purple hair cascading over golden eyes, skin like porcelain, and sharp features that lent a wicked elegance to her face. It was hauntingly familiar. Then her father rose, announcing it was time to depart for the Divine Duchy, where her groom, Theobald Alois Divine, awaited. Her heart lurched. The Divine Duchy, that name, she knew it. In her previous life, bedridden in the hospital, she had read a manga called The Ice Hero and the Sacred Jewel. Its protagonist was Noah Kimberly Divine, son of the cold Duke Theobald and his cruel stepmother. Noah's childhood was filled with neglect, his heart frozen until he found warmth and purpose alongside Florence, the heroine. Their journey brimmed with battles, betrayals, and pain, but love had carried them to victory. The tale had ended happily for Noah. Yet the one who perished in disgrace at his hand was none other than the villainous stepmother, Isabel Dora Divine. The next day, Isabel stood in her wedding dress, her thoughts churning. She vowed silently never to commit the cruelty that had doomed her counterpart in the story. Harming a child was unthinkable. Still, her fate terrified her. Perhaps the only escape was to endure quietly until Noah went off to war, then flee with what little she could. The ceremony proceeded. When it came time to exchange rings, Theobald's expression was icy, his gaze refusing even to meet hers. Known as the Ice Duke, he had no fondness for women, and his indifference was palpable. Why he had chosen her, she couldn't fathom. Without a word, he slid the ring onto her finger and turned away. Upon arrival at the Duke's grand estate, he vanished, without introducing her to the household. Isabel burned with indignation. What husband abandoned his bride so coldly? The butler Walt stepped forward in his master's stead, apologizing and presenting her as the new lady of the manor. Determined not to be dismissed, Isabel declared in a commanding voice that she would take charge as the Duchess, her poisoned confidence leaving no room for doubt. Inside, her mind whirled, but outwardly she steeled herself. Weakness would only invite contempt. Just then, a commotion broke out. A maid tried to restrain a small boy, calling him Lord Noah. Isabel turned and her breath caught. The child, golden-haired, angelic, with innocent eyes wide with curiosity, was the very same Noah who would one day grow to be the hero of the tale. 10 years too early, he stood before her, vulnerable and pure. How could the Isabel of the manga have ever tormented such a child? The very thought made her sick. Walt ordered the maid, Camilla, to take Noah back to his room, but Isabel stopped them. If she was to be his stepmother, then it was only right that she greet him. Kneeling, she introduced herself gently, asking his age. Camilla explained he was 3 years old, but had yet to speak. The reason soon became clear. His nanny had perished and his care had fallen to attendants. Worse, the previous nanny had silenced him, afraid his voice might anger the Duke. Deprived of words and a affection, he had been isolated into silence. Isabel's heart clenched. This was not mere misfortune, it was neglect. Without hesitation, she embraced the boy as he toddled into her arms, his tiny frame trembling but eager. If adults would not protect him, then she would. She would shield him, raise him, and never allowed him to suffer. The next day, Isabel set about her promise. She wanted to read Noah a picture book, only to discover that none existed in this world. Undeterred, she poured her energy into crafting a paper theater, channeling the creativity she had once indulged as an otaku. With handmade illustrations and improvised sound effects, she performed a tale of adventure. A boy, a girl, thieves, beasts, and at last a dragon that granted wishes. At first, Noah stared in confusion, but soon his eyes shone with wonder, his small hands clapping as laughter spilled from his lips. Isabel's heart soared. She threw herself into the performance with everything she had, her voice and movements alive with passion. When it ended, Camilla marveled at the spectacle, insisting she had never experienced such delight. Isabel smiled shyly, insisting it had been for Noah's sake. Then, as Camilla begged for another telling, something miraculous happened. Noah's lips parted, and in a trembling voice, he whispered, again. The world seemed to stop. Isabel's eyes filled with tears. Camilla gasped in shock, confirming that he had spoken his very first word. Isabel knelt before him, urging him to say it once more. With effort, he puffed out his cheeks and stammered, again, Muthiel. He mispronounced mother, yet the word pierced her heart like sunlight breaking through clouds. Overcome with joy, Isabel pulled him into her arms, vowing silently to love and protect this precious boy with all her strength. Her journey had begun, not as the villainess destined for ruin, but as a mother reborn, determined to rewrite the fate that awaited them both.
A new day began with a frantic cry echoing through the mansion halls. One of the maids rushing in, panicked, shouting for her mistress to stop. But the sight that awaited her was Isabel, standing with a Japanese saw in hand, her face sharpened with determination as she cut through wooden pieces. The scene shifted soon after to a far softer sight. Noah, the little boy with bright, sparkling eyes. He was gazing eagerly at the objects before him, excitement bubbling out in his small voice as he exclaimed to his mother how many toys there were. Isabel chuckled warmly and explained that they were called building blocks. Noah tilted his head in wonder, repeating the strange name with innocent curiosity, his tone so sweet it nearly melted her heart. As Isabel watched, she reflected on the world she now lived in. There was almost nothing for children here. No toys, not even proper daily necessities designed with little ones in mind. Utensils existed, yes, but they were clumsy, heavy, and ill-suited for small hands. What Noah truly needed was stimulation and education. That was why she had decided upon the idea of blocks. At first, she had tried cutting them herself, but after the staff had begged her to stop before she hurt herself, the stableman had kindly shaped the wood into various pieces for her. She had then polished and painted them by hand, determined to give Noah something worthwhile. Now, she wondered, what would he choose to build? But Noah only stared blankly at the box, uncertain. Isabel realized at once that he didn't know how to use them. Smiling, she demonstrated, stacking them carefully until they formed the shape of a castle. Noah's eyes widened in awe, and Isabel encouraged him to try. When she asked what he wanted to build, his simple, heartfelt answer, "A little house with my mother," made her chest ache with love. Inside, she rejoiced. Thanks to picture books, Noah's speech had blossomed. He was talking more, learning faster, and his curiosity grew like a flame. To her, he was brilliant, kind, gentle, without complaints or fuss. Truly an angel. Which only made her wonder and frustration why the Duke treated him with such coldness. She remembered the day she timidly suggested that perhaps the Duke might spend a little time with Noah, only to be cut down with an icy question. Why should he speak to that child? The memory left her seething, pounding her pillow in fury well into the night. As the weeks of marriage passed, Isabel began to see the truth of her new life. Aside from the bitter wall between the Duke and his son, everything else was startlingly peaceful. She had worried about how her husband might treat her, but she needn't have. He ignored her entirely. He neither dined with her nor sought her company, and when they crossed paths, he avoided her gaze. Yet to her surprise, the servants she feared would be hostile treated her with kindness. They looked at her with pity as the wife neglected by her husband, but still they ensured she had good meals, dresses, accessories, and even a budget she could use freely. To Isabel, it felt like living in a kind of heaven. She often heard the maids whisper that life was easier when the Duke kept his distance, while Noah napped and her husband drowned himself herself in paperwork, Isabel's curiosity drew her beyond the mansion. She wished to see the Duke's territory with her own eyes. Riding with her maids, she marveled at the colorful brick houses, the bustling streets, and the marketplace alive with chatter. It felt to her like stepping into a fairy tale. The maids asked her impression and she praised the beauty of it, making them beam with pride. One of the younger maids pointed out nervously that they had already passed both dress and accessory shops. Isabel explained with a spark of mischief that her true destination was a construction shop. The maid blinked in confusion, asking if she planned to build a villa, but Isabel only smiled, hinting at another purpose. When she stepped down from the carriage, ignoring the maid's attempt to precede her, she was greeted by townsfolk full of warmth. They praised her youth and beauty, remarked on the Duke's remarriage, and thanked her for the peace his rule had brought them. Isabel received their words with gentle grace before stepping into the shop. A worker glanced up in surprise at the noblewoman's arrival, fumbling for words until the shop's master emerged. He too looked at her with suspicion, demanding to know why a noble had come to his humble place of business. Isabel met his stare directly and explained her intent. She wanted to commission work, she said, handing him a sketch of what she desired: toys for children. The boss frowned, dismissing it as a trivial job they didn't have time for, but Isabel pressed on, reasoning with him calmly. She spoke of the rainy season, of how outdoor construction would slow, of how quality worsened in damp air. This would be the perfect time for small-scale projects, and she promised to pay generously. The boss grew sharp, accusing her of believing she could buy them off with money, mocking the rumors of her being a spoiled, shallow woman. But Isabel did not falter. She acknowledged her own rudeness in coming unannounced, apologized sincerely, and then quietly revealed that she had researched the territory's employment rates. Work dwindled dangerously during the rainy season, she pointed out, and surely they must feel the pinch. The boss faltered, begrudgingly admitting she was right, though making a few toys would be nothing more than a temporary measure. Isabel seized upon his words and suggested something greater: a children's goods shop, requiring a steady stream of products and promising long-term work. Still suspicious of her noble blood, the boss resisted. Isabel only smiled, challenging him. If he disliked nobles, why not take their money and use it to his benefit? With the Duke's family backing, the customers would be wealthy nobles willing to spend freely. It was an untapped market, she explained, one that could flourish if seized early. The boss, skeptical, asked why she had chosen his shop. Isabel explained she had seen illustrations of their furniture and admired the gentle, rounded lines of their craftsmanship. She believed they had the talent to create toys that were safe and delightful for children. She confessed that she had wanted to make them herself, but lacked the skill, and her maid chimed in with a sigh about Isabel's habit of recklessly wielding sharp tools. The craftsman studied her, doubtful of her nobility, until her maid confirmed she was of the Simmons family. The name sparked recognition. He knew the suffering of that poor land, barren and heavily taxed. A woman from such a background would surely understand hardship. At last, he softened. The idea did not seem so foolish after all, and when Isabel asked again if he would take on the project, he nodded, agreeing to work with her if she managed the shop. Isabel, startled by his sudden acceptance, broke into a relieved smile. Time passed, and back at the mansion, Noah played happily with his blocks beside Camilla. The maid praised Isabel's idea of a children's shop, certain that picture books and toys would be beloved. Isabel hesitated, worrying what her husband might think if she acted without his approval, but Camilla reassured her. As long as it was within her budget, she said, there was no issue. The butler could handle the details. Isabel wondered if it could really be considered no more than a small purchase, marveling at the sheer wealth of the Duke. She had never ventured into such an undertaking before, and doubt lingered. Her thoughts were broken by Noah's cheerful cry. He had completed a little ship out of blocks and wanted her to see it. Isabel gasped with delight, hugging him tightly and showering him with praise. Deep inside, she resolved to do even more for him. If she pushed herself, perhaps she could help unlock his full potential. Smiling, she asked him softly if he wanted more toys. His eyes sparkled at the idea, his little body lighting up with joy as he realized what she meant. Isabel drew him into another embrace, her heart swelling as she whispered her vow. She would do her very best. Another bright morning unfolded with Isabel seated at a long wooden table in the library, surrounded by tottering stacks of books. She leaned forward, her brow furrowed in concentration as she rifled through page after page. Half aloud, half to herself, she mused that once again she had returned to the shelves in search of answers. Her quest was specific, proof of resin's existence in this world. Inwardly, she reflected that she had expected something fantastical, rare plants, magical resources, even peculiar beasts. In a place so unlike her old world, wasn't it natural to assume such things would exist? And while it was true that monsters roamed these lands, the only ones she had encountered were harmless slimes. They weren't frightening at all. In fact, they served an almost civic role, dissolving waste and keeping the town surprisingly clean. It struck her as oddly practical, this blend of medieval trappings and eco-friendly creatures. Strange, but coherent. Even so, after hours of searching, her efforts bore nothing. Her shoulders slumped as the realization sunk in. Resin simply wasn't here. Perhaps it was time to rethink her plans. Lost in thought, she failed to notice a lone book on the floor until her foot caught on it. With a muffled yelp, she stumbled forward, clutching her head where she struck it. When she glanced down at the culprit, her irritation melted. She lifted the volume carefully, her eyes widening with dawning excitement. Could this be the clue she had been seeking? Her revelation was cut short as the library doors burst open with a dramatic crash. Isabel sprinted out, her voice bubbling with energy as she called for her son. She exclaimed that she had discovered something wonderful, urging him to listen. Yet, Noah, sitting cross-legged on the floor, showed no reaction. She waved, calling his name again with growing urgency. A nearby maid chuckled softly, telling her she had arrived at just the right moment. Isabel tilted her head curiously, hands clasped with anticipation. With an indulgent smile, the maid explained that young Noah had become utterly absorbed in wooden toys. Isabel's eyes lit up, only for the maid to sigh and add that the boy's fixation was so deep he wouldn't even stir for an outing. Isabel's cheerful expression wavered. If this continued, she fretted, the heir to the dukedom might never step beyond his room. Gathering her determination, she crouched before him with an encouraging smile, suggesting that perhaps he would like to join her outside. Sunlight, she reminded him brightly, was vital for one's health. At last, Noah looked up, eyes sparkling, and declared with innocent delight that toys were amazing. The words struck her like arrows. Her heart clenched at the sight of his rare, radiant smile. For a moment, she nearly surrendered to her maternal giddiness, but she forced herself to regain composure. This was her chance to coax him out. Straightening, she raised her finger with theatrical flair and asked him if he wanted to witness a hero's special move. Noah's face lit up, curiosity burning. With the poise of a stage performer, Isabel instructed him to lift his head and stretch his hands. She told him to sense the current flowing within and to focus on the warmth radiating from his core. Noah and the watching maids leaned forward in rapt attention. Her voice grew more intense as she urged him to gather that energy, channeled it into his palms, and picture it coalescing into a glowing sphere. Light bloomed between her hands, growing until it shone brilliantly. She cried out, thrusting her arms forward. A ripple of raw energy shot outward, striking the tree with a resounding impact. The air shimmered with lingering force. The boy and the maids gasped in unison, eyes wide with awe. Isabel, cheeks faintly rushed, downplayed the feat as though it were nothing special, though she held herself like a performer basking in applause. Noah cheered that she was incredible, bouncing in delight, while the maids gushed that their lady resembled a hero from a tale. Inside, Isabel chuckled nervously. It wasn't truly remarkable. This was only life magic, a harmless glow that posed no threat. Offensive magic, on the other hand, was reserved for those born with extraordinary heritage. In fact, even the Emperor himself, with his line of fire, lacked access to such advanced spells. But the Duke's bloodline, descendants of wind and water, was gifted with immense power, making them natural rivals to the throne. Isabel, by contrast, was only a common noble with the faintest spark of light magic. Still, when she had first discovered it, her inner fangirl nearly exploded from excitement. Noah, still brimming with wonder, asked if he could also try. Raising his small hands, he announced that he felt warmth in his belly, in his head, and in his fingers as well. Isabel's heart skipped. Had he grasped it instantly? She covered her mouth in shock, whispering that he was a genius. Noah clenched his fist with determination, vowing to do it. Kneeling to meet his gaze, Isabel softened. Though he had yet to undergo the blessing ceremony, she told him gently that he could still practice shaping the flow of energy. With a bright smile, she invited him to try together. He responded eagerly, his voice ringing with certainty. Watching his tiny form glow faintly with uncontrolled light, Isabel felt both swelling pride and a pang of unease. What path would await her son, so gifted,
yet so young. While their laughter rang through the courtyard, elsewhere in the estate, the Duke's office was steeped in tension. Theobald, pausing mid-report, frowned at the noise filtering through the windows. Walt, his composed aide, adjusted his glasses and remarked that seemed the lady had taken young Noah outside. The Duke's eyes narrowed, his words laced with disdain as he referred to her coldly. Walt, however, chided him gently, reminding his lord that even if the marriage was merely formal, she deserved respect. Contrary to rumors, she had shown genuine care for Noah, diligently tending to him day by day. Theobald scoffed at the notion, sneering that women were creatures driven by self-interest. Walt's gaze softened with quiet disapproval, but he chose silence, returning to his papers while the Duke continued writing in sharp strokes. Meanwhile, Isabel lay sprawled in her private bath, exhaling a muffled groan of exhaustion. A maid netted her shoulder sympathetically, noting how tired she seemed. Isabel admitted that spending every day chasing after Noah drained her in ways she had never imagined. Her maids, devoted and cheerful, declared they would preserve her beauty no matter what, bustling around with determined energy. Isabel blinked at their zeal, murmuring thanks as the self-proclaimed care team pampered her like royalty. Later, she sank deeper into the warm bathwater, her mind turned contemplative. She pondered what items should line the shelves of the children's supply store she envisioned. When she had once confided in Walt, he had suggested picture books filled with vivid illustrations and even promised to reach out to unrecognized but talented artists. With his help, picture books were now within reach. As for puzzles, the local Carpenters Guild had embraced the project eagerly. Their burly leader admitted that even the craftsmen themselves had enjoyed designing them. When prototypes arrived, Isabel found them sturdy, smooth, and perfectly shaped for small hands. Her craftsmen asked timidly if they were acceptable, and she praised them with sparkling eyes, declaring them far beyond her expectations. Her enthusiasm was contagious. Noah himself clapped in glee. Things were progressing at rapid speed, and her heart swelled with optimism. Seated at her writing desk days later, Isabel considered what else a store for children would require. Her gaze drifted to her tea set, and realization struck: terracware. Current options for children were impractical. Tiny slippery handles paired with fragile ceramics that shattered far too easily. It was unacceptable. She resolved to find safer materials. Lightweight, sturdy, and unbreakable. And yet, business was not her only concern. She recalled with unease a book she had discovered in the library, a chilling description of a plant native to the Simmons region, one whose material was lethally toxic. Fear had spurred her to send a letter to her family, pleading for confirmation. Weeks passed with no reply. Could they truly be so occupied, or was this delay more troubling than it appeared? Her question was answered when a maid burst into the room, breathless, announcing the sudden arrival of someone from her family. Isabel leapt to her feet in shock, her skirts swirling as she confronted her younger brother. Demanding to know why he had come unannounced, his face was shadowed with worry and his voice tight with urgency. He asked sharply what she had been thinking. Isabel faltered, asking if this was about the material from her letter and what result he had found. His reply struck like thunder. The substance was real, catastrophically dangerous. Her heart lurched. Oliver pressed her, aghast, demanding to know how she had stumbled upon such a thing and whether she understood the risk. She stood frozen, the weight of his words pressing down like a storm, unable to summon a response as the truth loomed before her.